Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Urban Ebb here in Peachtree Corners, Georgia, small little smart city just north of Atlanta. I have a great guest with me, Cynthia Currence. Hey, Cynthia, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, we're going to be discussing your new book, and also the effects it has on the nonprofit world and the things that people can take away from this. But before we get into that, I just want to say thanks to our sponsors also. EV Remodeling Inc. Has been a sponsor of ours for the last 3 or 4 years, actually. They are located here in Peachtree Corners. Eli, who owns it, him and his family live here in Peachtree Corners as well. If you have a house redo that you need done, whether it's a bathroom or a kitchen or a whole house remodel, they've done over 250, 260 of these remodels from design to build. They're the people to look at. So check them out. Great people, great family. evremodelinginc.com. Also, our second sponsor is Vox Populi, also located here in Peachtree Corners in Norcross. Um, Andrew and his son and his family run that business. You have a brand, anything that needs, you can think about this. You have a logo, you're in business, anything that needs a vehicle wrap, need apparel, you need a trade show display, anything you could put a logo on, any object you can put it on. They'll figure out how to do it for you. They've dealt with companies here locally as well as internationally and nationwide. So check them out. You go to voxpopuli.com and you can learn more about them. So I want to thank them for sponsoring our podcast and our publications. We appreciate that. So now let's get back to Cynthia. Cynthia, you're the author of Beyond Checks and Halos, um, Insights into Elevating Partnerships and Achieving the Improbable. I met you and I saw you speak at Southwest Gwinnett Business Chamber last month, I think it was. And I thought it'd be great to have you on a podcast with me to talk about what you're doing, about your book. So tell us actually a little bit about yourself. This way our listeners can get a fix on who you are and where you're coming from.
All right. Thank you so much. And many thanks to all the listeners for being there. I have spent my career in the nonprofit sector. So I've had the pleasure of working with some beautiful nonprofit brands. Um, the longest stint I had was with the American Cancer Society, 18 years there, and I had the privilege of leading their brand and marketing strategy. So basically, I got to tell folks a lot about how you can influence consumer behavior. And that might sound a little strange talk coming from a nonprofit, but they too need to influence consumer behavior. The American Cancer Society really wants you to get that mammogram, really wants you not to smoke, really wants you to do a few other things that are going to help you stay on the planet a little bit longer. But we also, wanted people to be able to release some of their treasure for the cause. So I had the pleasure of being able to tell them, who do you need to be talking to? What does the message need to say? Who needs to carry the message? All those kind of marketing questions.
Mhm.
And so I was telling them what to do a lot. And one of the trends I spotted was that a lot of the other major nonprofits were beginning to work with corporations in a very unique way and getting very large investments in their missions and causes. And so I made the recommendation that we need to do that too. And they said, fine, you go do it. And
Mhm.
so that entered the second half of my career in what we would call revenue development, but it was a very specific kind. It wasn't going to corporations with our hands out like this, which is what we normally do. It was going to corporations with a business objective in mind. And so I led a lot of, we called it a business unit, a corporate engagement business unit. And we looked for ways to engage with corporations that would have business benefit ROI for them and for us. And so that and the experiences I had when I was leading that business unit, it's the heartthrob of the book. And it's been in my heart and mind for many years. And so I'm so excited to have finally got it out of my head and my heart and on paper. And my hope is that it really will help companies and nonprofits find other ways to be able to be stronger together. One quick example that to show you what I mean about a business rather than a transactional, there's a lot of really wonderful relationships between profits and nonprofits that are transactionally based, those fantastic grants and sponsorships, those types of things, they help make the world go around. They're great. But there's a different kind of conversation. And that's the conversation that I wanted to be able to explore and to build upon. Shortly after I got the opportunity to start that business unit on corporate engagement, I got a call from Citibank, and they wanted to sign a license agreement. They wanted to be able to put the American Cancer Society mark and name on a credit card.
Right.
And they were offering $150,000 a year to do that. But I didn't know what it was worth. And
Right.
and a lot of nonprofits would say, that sounds good, let's take the money and run.
Right.
But I knew that we needed to pause and find out what it was really worth. What was it worth? Could we really move that consumer behavior? And if we could, what would it be worth? And to their credit, Citibank
Mhm.
not only agreed to do research to find out what the worth was, they paid for it. We took a small sliver of our donor base and made an actual offer. And we looked at response rate and we looked
Mhm.
at activation rate for the credit card. And that conversation turned into a $15 million deal.
Wow.
That's the kind
Wow.
of
Wow.
improbable, sort of.
Yes, yes. I think organizations don't think about beyond branding, like make us look good. They don't think about the value of their brand.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And
So obviously Citibank, I think that was at the time when a lot of these card companies were looking to make partnerships with different brands.
yes,
Um, because cross-selling, if you will, right? Again, with other people made sense. But the fact that they went from 100,000 to $15 million deal, I'm assuming over a
yeah,
period
it
of
was over,
years.
yeah, it was over 5 years,
Okay.
which
But
is,
still, I mean,
yeah.
100,000 as one time versus 15 million, big, big, big difference. So you went from doing what you were doing at the American Cancer Society, thinking, you know what? I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book that's going to help other nonprofits. You think it's going to take you 8 months to write that book, to get it out. The journey obviously took longer than you thought. And I don't know if the 35 interviews you ended up with was the number that you originally thought about. But give us, so it didn't take 8 months. How long did it take? Why did you choose 35 and the 35 you chose? And what was the process there?
Thank you. Yeah, it was, I really did think I could get this done a lot faster than I did, but it took 2 years to be able to get it on the market, so from starting writing to having it show up on Amazon, where you can buy it was a 2 year journey. And I wanted it not just to be my own stories
Mhm.
and insights from them. I wanted it to be broader than that. And so I wanted to be able to represent other people who had done similar work. And so I wanted people on both the profit side of the coin and the nonprofit side of the coin. I
Mhm.
wanted, in some cases, I got to talk to people that had been on both sides of the coin. That was wonderful.
Mhm.
And so some of the people I had known, in my career and I had met, and so I reached out to them and they were very generous. And then other people I met either through them or through other people that I knew that had a story to tell.
Mhm.
And so it took quite a bit of time to actually schedule with these people and talk to them. And I did a recap of all of the interviews I did with them and fed it back to them to say, did I hear you right?
Mhm.
Is this, and because that verification was very important to me. I didn't want to tell a story in a wrong way in the book. And
Sure.
I wanted everybody to be proud to be listed in that book. And so I am very proud of the list of folks that are in there and the people that were willing to give me testimonials. Um, the head of the foundation for Delta gave me a beautiful endorsement for the front of the book,
Mhm.
Tad Hutchinson,
Mhm.
and Vicky Esquera, who she just did phenomenal work with Feeding America. Her story is probably the best story in the book. So
Mhm.
anyway, it just interviewing
Yeah.
that probably took about 6 months just to get the interviews done. And then I wrote
Right.
it. And I wrote it in a way that I was getting the insights out from each of the interviews. And
Mhm.
when I met with my publisher, Ripples, which is fantastic if you're looking for a publisher for your book, Ripples is fantastic. And they said, "We love your book. We want to represent your book,
Right.
but we think you need to flip it. You've told it from the perspective of all the people you've interviewed.
Mm.
And what you've got is 50 insights here. Flip it and tell it the insights and then draw from the different stories." And I knew as soon as they said it, that was right. But boy, was that painful. I mean,
I can imagine.
it took another year to do that.
It's almost like writing the book from scratch again, I bet.
Yeah, yeah. And they said it'll be easy. You've already written it all, but no, it wasn't that easy.
It's too bad you couldn't just hand it over and say, "Can you do it for me?" Yeah,
That
that's
was, yeah,
I would imagine. Plus the editing that had to come later anyway, and all that, because
yeah,
the
yeah.
process is amazing. Um, would you, aside from obviously have done it differently at the beginning, what did you find? I guess what did you find surprising being a first-time author? Once you got to the point where you knew, okay, you had to shift this, you had to flip the book and stuff, and getting it out there and getting it published.
Yeah.
Any surprising things that you can share with that process?
Well, in addition to it taking a lot longer than I thought,
Yeah.
and having fabulous input to structure and that sort of thing. Um, I also discovered I always thought I was a pretty good writer,
Hmm.
but boy, I couldn't have done this without the editor. John Reese was he was part editor, part writing coach, I think. And I had a lot of friends also that were helping me because you get stuck when you're writing sometimes. And you have stuff there, and sometimes it just flows, and then sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And my fiance was fond of saying, "Books don't get written unless your butt's in the chair." So
Yes, procrastination doesn't help.
that helped. So I
So,
learned a little more about me and my habits, and sometimes my behaviors. Um, Procrastination being one doesn't always serve my ambitions well.
yes, yes. But we all have that evil thing that we have to deal with. But once you get past that and the book was published, where did you end up finding the feedback interesting also that you were getting from the book?
So, the other thing I didn't think about was that because I thought about writing a book, it's all about the writing. But
Yeah.
Ripples said that's only the first phase. The first phase is writing it. The second is really all of that input in editing and the
Mm.
feel of the book, the literal feel of the book, as well as the experiential reading of the book. This whole making it into something you hold in your hand is another phase of the process. And then the final phase, which I'm in right now, is get the word out there, let people know about this and
Right.
why you did it. And I'm again so thankful for you helping me
Yeah,
get,
every author is a marketing director for
yeah.
themselves, right? You have to be out there. So let's get into the book and the insight. Partner motivation, proportional value. How do we, you went from motivating corporate partners. There's probably a myth there somewhere, but about that, about what motivates a corporate partner, really. And can you speak to that a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point and perspective because companies they run on an ROI philosophy. They really, and not a lot of nonprofits sometimes would beat companies up if they felt that they were in it to make money. Well, companies are in it to make money.
Right.
And if you can help them with their ROI or with a significant issue that they are facing, you are much more interesting to them than just a heart connection. And companies do have hearts, and they do want to make the world a better place. If it's a better place, it's a better place for business. But they also run like a business. And the first chapter in the book is it's all about business.
Hmm.
Nonprofits are businesses too.
Sure.
And so,
Yes. I mean, if nonprofits don't run as a business, they're gonna be out of business soon, right? If
yes,
they're
absolutely, the same dynamics hold for them. And so I spend the first whole chapter really saying that if you want to do this kind of conversation with a company, you got to put your business hat on. You
yeah,
got to know what your assets are. You have to know what they are worth, and you have to know who they are worth something to,
yeah,
because not everything is valuable to everybody. And you might
right.
be great at supply chain, but not everybody needs supply chain. You might have a really powerful brand for moving a certain kind of behavior, but not everybody might be in need of that. And there's a story, another one, if I could digress into stories so people can kind of get what I'm
Yeah,
talking about a
yeah.
little bit.
Well,
Um, when I was at the American Cancer Society, it's a big billion-dollar organization, but most of its budget was accounted for. If you had an idea and it's something that's neat, it was very hard to kind of carve stuff out. And what
right.
we really needed to carve out was money for nutrition messaging, because it was a point in time when not so many people were aware of how important what you put in your mouth is to how long you get to stay on the planet. And so I was looking to use other people's money. And so I was wanted to use companies' monies. And so
Sure.
I had to work only with products. If they were ingestible or topical, they had to meet science. So I started looking at the cereal category. General Mills had 28 cereals at that time.
Yeah,
7 of them met our science. And so I called a friend that worked for General Mills at the time, and I said, "Look, I've got this idea. I'd like to go talk to them." He said, "Don't." He said, "They right now, their pricing strategy is so tight that they are trying very hard to make more money, but if they increase the price of a box of cereal even by a penny, it's going to send customers scurrying to another brand."
yeah.
And so I said, "Oh, that's their pain point. What do I have that can address their pain point?"
Mhm.
My brand, the American Cancer Society, had 98% name awareness and trusted on par with the personal physician. If the American Cancer Society said this is good for you, more people would. But I needed to prove it. And so
Right. Yeah,
I did market intercept. I did market research in 4 markets, and basically asked people how much more would you pay for a box of cereal
yeah.
if some of it went to cure cancer. And I got this beautiful bell curve. Down the middle was
Yeah,
25 cents. And even if half of that was a lie, I
mhm,
had a really nice conversation.
yeah.
Friend got me 15 minutes. So I
Ah,
walked in there and the guy didn't
wow.
want to talk to me. He
Talk,
said,
talk about Shark Tank. 15 minutes to pitch?
15 minutes to pitch. So
Yeah,
I walked in there with my bell curve. I didn't go into anything, but it was so interesting and it was so on the mark in terms of what was important to him and
yeah.
his business. That turned into an hour-long conversation. Roll forward, it was a $1.5 million dollar relationships, and we got access to their advertising. It was a really good,
So partner motivation, right?
right,
Proportional value, the things that you step into like
right,
that. You brought something to the table for them
right.
that would increase their bottom line. And it worked for the American Cancer Society. Like you said, you found 7 cereals that fit your science. So it's not like um, you were doing things in a transparent, good way that
Mhm.
served your your clientele, if you will, and the customers of the cereal company, right? Um, and that's a tough thing to do out there, I think, right? To find that and to work with it. Sometimes the partnerships are not a good thing, and you sort of have to walk away from it. Have you ever done that before?
Yeah, there sometimes they don't work. And I'm very data based. So I like to try to stack the cards in my favor, if you will.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't work well, and you do need to walk away. I remember I tried to, I had had a couple of experiences where the power of the brand
Yeah.
could influence consumer behavior. So I thought it
Mhm.
could do it with car insurance as well, and it couldn't. I mean, we did a test, and that was not a good bell curve. And
Okay, so
And
best to walk away from that, I guess.
and we had to walk away, from each other, and I mean, they loved the American Kansas City brand, and they had a really great offer,
Mm,
for insurance, but it just wasn't a good match.
okay. So
And
sometimes you do have to take that step back and walk away.
right, right.
Um, Now you keep talking about storytelling being important, right? Building that relationship. Um, because, yeah, companies can write off 10% of what they give, but, you know, that they could, if a year is bad, they're not going to hit that 10% mark. So really, have to believe in what you're doing. Um, have you ever found when you're pitching like that, uh, some surprises there? Um,
Well, I have, and a lot of the pitching I did wasn't to the philanthropic arm of the company.
okay.
It was to like a brand manager,
Yeah.
like the cereal fella.
So you
Uh,
have to you really have to frame it correctly for that corporate partner to be able to say, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to us to join you.
yeah.
Um, would you have picked out any other company, let's say? I'm just curious, in a brainstorming way, what other companies would you have pitched for the American Cancer Society if you had an opportunity?
Well, one that I did pitch that was another one that I did pitch that was a lot of fun and a win for both sides was a quasi it's the Florida Department of Citrus, so a quasi governmental sort of
Okay.
entity.
Yeah.
They actually are responsible for, back then anyway, about 80% of the fruit for juice in the country.
Gotcha. Wow.
And that
Yeah.
was back in the time when Coca-Cola was doing share of stomach and, um,
Hmm.
but they wanted to find ways to have juice consumption was going way down,
Yeah.
and they needed to be able to just stabilize the market. They really didn't have ambitions at that point to grow it dramatically, just stabilize it. And we did believe it or not, a humor-based ad with them, and which turned things around. It really worked well in terms of being able to get people to look at juice differently at that point in time. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah,
Um,
the ad was really cute. It's rare that you do a cancer commercial that makes you giggle, but that one did, and it was very memorable. Not just memorable that it's a good idea
yeah.
to that juice is a good idea, but people at the research afterwards showed that people remembered that juice was one of the things you could eat that could reduce your risk of cancer. So it was healthy and it was a winner on several different
So
levels.
good educational
Mhm,
value to it.
mhm.
Um, of the 35 that you interviewed that you did work with, what was what surprises did you find there, or what were the most interesting ones to you? Um,
The commonality initially
okay.
was a bit of that because everyone I interviewed emphasized that that profits and nonprofits need to realize that it is about business. These
Mhm.
kind of conversations are about, that was across the board. And I really didn't expect everybody to kind of sing that home. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of comments about take the time to build a relationship and get to know each other because you're not going to be vulnerable and really tell people your pain points unless you trust them and you get to know them.
Mm.
So everything rides on trust. And when you're able to peel things back a bit and really understand what people need, sometimes you have a match, but sometimes you don't. And another thing that I think was a little surprising to me, but I'm so glad that it's came true, is that I worked with a lot of very big companies and I worked for a big nonprofit, but the questions that get you to this kind of relationship are
Mhm.
scalable. They work on the local level, they work on
Okay.
a regional level, they work on a global level. So that one was a pleasant surprise too, that this thing can work at any level of play.
So that was the next question. When I heard you speak at the chamber, the Southwest Gwinnett Chamber meeting, um, all the examples were of large corporate. American Cancer Society is huge. There were a lot of small nonprofits in the room as well. And I think about that, right? About how would that work for a small nonprofit? Um, sure, it sounds easy for it to be scalable, but some people don't see it that way, right? They can't grasp it yet. Um, so I don't know, maybe can you give us an example of how a small nonprofit can look at the community, corporate community in their neighborhoods, if you will, or in their city or in their county? How can they approach those types of companies to work with them? Do you have a good example you can share with us?
The story that's coming to mind right now is one that involves a friend of mine. She owned two daycares,
Mhm.
and she wanted to get out of the business of being handling so much of the facility and operations of running and owning actual real estate to do this. She said, there's got to be another way to do this. I
Hmm.
still want to help kids and families. I still need a place to do that. Um, so she thought about, who has spaces? Again, what are my assets? I have a jam up way of helping kids and doing this. What do I need? I need space. Again, a scalable question. Who has space? Well,
Uh-huh.
schools have space.
For
And what
sure.
do schools need? Schools have a lot of kids that can't go home right after school. And
Mm.
she piloted a program in one or two schools where she did an aftercare. She rented the space, which also was money for the local school from renting it. She helped the families. The kids have this fabulous experience.
Yeah.
And the pilot worked, and she's now in about 22 different schools
Wow.
where she no longer has to deal with the headaches of the plumbing work and that kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
She gets to focus on the kids. She gets to focus on being
Yeah.
able to offer this incredible after school experience.
Right.
And the school gets a solution for their families
Sure.
and they get extra money. I mean, so that's one example of how the same questions
Hmm.
just, you know, what are your assets and needs?
Right.
Who mirrors your assets and needs with their assets and needs? And how can that work?
That's
Small restaurants, they need people to come in.
mhm.
If you've got a local following of people um, that come to your nonprofit,
Mhm.
uh, it's likely that a local retailer or a local restaurant might be interested in being able to have you shout out to them that they are new, that they are open, that they are
Mhm.
here, and for that, perhaps give you a percent of the intake that comes in for the period of the promotion.
So, so,
Scalable.
so it sounds like really nonprofits today have to be, because things are changing, right, out there in the world, for various reasons. COVID, also remote work. It's hard to reach people now and stuff. Everyone's prioritizing a little different than they used to. Um, like you said, yes, profit. Every organization, whether you're a nonprofit or profit for profit, that word profit is in there. There's a reason for that. Nonprofit doesn't mean you should be losing money. It just means a
Right.
whole different thing, right? But profit is the word that they both share. Um, so these organizations really have to rethink what they're doing and look at their volunteers, their branding, their distribution, right? Because maybe how they distribute their products or services, their nonprofit, could be of help to another organization. I think you had mentioned, I don't know if it was you, that had mentioned a food aspect of
Yes. Yeah.
delivery, which I thought was fascinating. I was like, there you go. There's like someone should have thought about that. What was that example again that you thought about on that?
I think that's the best story in the book.
Yeah.
And it involves Feeding America. Vicky
Hmm.
Esquera
Yes.
joined Feeding America right before they changed their name to Feeding America. She helped lead that rebrand as well. They used to
What,
be Harvest.
Yes, that's right. That was a different name like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And second harvest, people have to you have to educate them what that really means.
Right.
Feeding America is very clear. It leads out ahead of your brand and
Hmm.
or out ahead of your organization. And when she joined, she retired from being the chief marketing officer for Delta. So she was way up there
Yeah.
in terms of aviation.
Yeah.
And she'd been done when she retired. She wanted to make a difference. And
Mhm.
so she interviewed to be considered being a board member for Feeding America. They ended up hiring her as the CEO.
Mm.
So she came in with a very outside in
Yeah.
thinking. And she said, look, we need so much more food. And there's these companies out there dumping food.
Mm.
And she said, we are really good at moving food to where it needs to be distributed to people who are food insecure. We
Yeah.
can do that. And she, because of who her role had been before, she knew the CEO at Sam's Club and she calls him up and said, "You're losing a lot of money throwing money away, throwing food away, and
Huh.
you're paying your employees to throw food away, to lose money. I can fix that problem for you. I can
Mm.
pick it up before the expiration dates, get it to people who need it, and you'll even get a tax write-off. This is a great deal."
Yeah.
And
Win-win.
he basically said, "Prove it." And she did. They did a little pilot. She was able to pick up the food, deliver it, and that little $20 million organization grew to a $2 billion organization because she identified something that was a huge need, not just to one company, but
Yeah.
many companies, and was able then to also continue to grow her infrastructure so that she could continue to solve that problem for both. And it's
Yeah.
okay for nonprofits to solve a company's problem for them if it also solves the mission and drives the mission of the organization.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that for sure. You're working off your strengths and you're able to far outreach apparently the mission that they had, right?
Yeah.
What's funny to me is that I forget the name of the company. I think it was the American Bread Company, maybe. It was a franchise. It was one of these places where they made lots of breads during the day, but at night they had to throw it out essentially, right? And I remember that I was part of I think it was a Baptist church, maybe, or maybe it was a non-denominational church. And they would pick up the bread at night. Um, like they would just go in, pick up all the bread, and then they would give it out the next day.
Yeah.
And I always thought, wow, that is cool to be able to do that. I never thought about scaling it like that. But apparently if you have the logistics for it
She had
and
a
you're
legit
already
thought.
moving stuff, it's just a matter of moving it so from this place versus that place, right? I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a great example. I think that's worth any nonprofit looking at to think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
To, like you said, to look at your assets, to look at what you do well, and then see how that would affect a corporation and how you can help them. And by doing so, you end up helping the organization itself, right?
Yeah. But nonprofits do need to have criteria because,
Yes.
you don't want to clean up a company. If a company's really made a bad mistake in the marketplace and they're
Mhm.
really looking to kind of shore up their brand image, you need to tread carefully before you get into that because that's not what you're all about in terms of,
Well, I'm
cleaning.
glad you said that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
brand, just like corporate or nonprofit, and they need to protect their brand. There's a value there, and it
Yeah.
doesn't take much,
Yeah.
right, to lose that brand value. American Cancer Society has a great brand value. Like you said, 90% awareness, 92% awareness. Um, Going into the wrong partnership would have been bad, right?
But really bad.
Especially, think about it. If it was a wrong partnership and you find out a year later that product had cancer, carcinogens in it and stuff, what would that have looked like, you know?
That was awful.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We had a 10-point criteria. So, like anything ingestible or topical had to meet science
yeah,
before we could talk to them. It also had to build brand rather than have a risk to brand. It had to not bring us outside our core capabilities,
right.
because we don't need to be building um, new strength, if you will, purely to be able to do a partnership. It has
For
to be
sure.
within our strength.
For
So
sure. That all makes sense. Um, do you have any upcoming events, training, anything happening that you want to share with our listeners that they should be aware of?
I have just finished shortly a three-part session with the Georgia Center for Nonprofits, looking at three elements of the book. So we just finished that,
Wow.
and I am available. This is my passion now, being
Okay.
able to get this word out. So if any of your readers has an organization or a speaking opportunity, I'm open to that.
Excellent. Excellent. And if they want to, if any organization wants to talk to you about consulting with them or anything like that, is that something too that might be out there?
I am not going into the consulting
Okay.
business.
All right.
Uh, but I am open to like advising and getting
Okay.
things started. And so I've had a couple of nonprofits that have bought my book for their leadership and for their board, and
Right.
then invited me in to lead a session so that they can begin thinking this way. I
Excellent.
do that without a charge because this truly is a passion for me.
Okay.
I do ask that you buy the book and read the book first, but
Yeah, 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 for sure. And it's available on Amazon, both in trade, hardcover, and Kindle. So it's easy to get to, just beyond checks and halos, and they'll be able to find it. Um, so is there another book brewing? I had asked this before the podcast, but I thought I'd ask it again. Anything
There
else coming
is,
out?
there is, I do have another one in my heart. I want to put my energy into launching this one well first.
Yeah.
But yeah, stay tuned. I think I got another one in me.
All right, sounds good. Is there they can find you I'm sure anyone can find you on LinkedIn on if they search Cynthia Currence, put in American Cancer, probably pop up right there at the top. Is there a website they can go to as well?
Yeah, they can go to currentsassociates.com. That's my website.
Excellent. Good. And great. So if you all I highly encourage you. She give a great talk at the chamber. That's why it stimulated me to think, well, you know what? A podcast would be great here because I love talking about these things. And check it out. So reach out to Cynthia, and I'm sure she'll be more than happy to be able to come to you and talk to you about the book and about what's more important to everyone, right?
Thank you.
Creating those partnerships. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate you joining us. Again, thank you to EV Remodeling Inc. and to Vox Populi for supporting us. Appreciate the corporate sponsorship as well. And Cynthia, you've been a dear. I appreciate you joining me on this.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Have a
Thank you.
great day.
Same here. Hang in there with us. Thank you, everyone. If you have comments, put them in the notes, in the comments below, wherever you're listening to this. And if you need to reach out to Cynthia, we'll have links in the show notes on the website. So thank you again.